Hello and happy Honduran Independence Day and also Independence Day for most of Central America. I'm just going to talk a little bit today about Independence Day in Honduras and why all of the Central American countries have the same Independence Day, September 15th, and why they are only a day off of Mexico's Independence Day, September 16th. So when you started off, these were all of the Spanish territories in the Americas, and as you can see, they spanned most of the continent. And a lot of what is now the United States, including Florida, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Montana. At one point, Spain actually bought the Louisiana Purchase from France briefly before the United States bought it, so all of that as well. And then you can see here like all the Caribbean, Central America, South America. So these were all one part of the Spanish Empire. Mexican independence started first, and since most of my background is in Mexico, I'm a little bit more familiar with this. So we have El Grito de Dolores, which is the Cry of Dolores, and it was by the Catholic priest, Father Hidalgo. And here he is. You can see him in the picture at the very front, pointing and holding his paper. And basically, he rang the bell that morning of the church and proclaimed his proclamation, and that is what started the fighting that led to Mexican independence from Spain. Mexico and Spain fought in the 1800s, early 1800s, for over a decade over Mexico's independence, but Mexico took advantage of when Napoleon and his French forces occupied Spain, and Napoleon pressured the Spanish crown to succeed his crown over to Napoleon's brother, Joseph. And so while this was happening in Spain, Mexico, who had been fighting bitterly against the Spanish for their independence, took advantage of this time period when Spain was, busy with their own things over on the European continent, and they declared their independence and called it the First Mexican Empire. And as you can see, it's all of what we would now call Mexico plus some of what was the United States later. But at the time, it was all of what was called New Spain. And so Mexico just went ahead and broke off in September. And then what happened is they drafted a declaration for Spain, letting them know that they were going to be independent, and they annexed the gray part that you see here. So what we would now call Central America, those states, those 5 states, voluntarily and without fighting agreed to become part of the First Mexican Empire. So basically what happened is Mexico fought for their independence, and then Honduras and the other Central Americans were like, when they saw that it was working, they were like, oh, also us too, we think that's a great idea, we would like to go. And they wrote a breakup letter to Spain and exited together. So that is why all of these countries are today, September 15th, celebrating their Independence Day together, because it was their independence from Spain. So what happened after this was the Empire of Mexico only lasted for 2 years, and then Mexico decided to reorganize itself as a republic. It's the country that we still know today. And when this happened, it gave voluntarily the land of these Central American countries, it gave them up voluntarily, that they were no longer part of Mexico and that they were going to be independent. And so then we had the República Federal de Centroamérica, the Federal Republic of Central America, and it was made up of not Belize and Panama, but of all the other Central American countries. So General Francisco Morazan, which would be the big general here, and he is revered in all 5 of those Central American countries, was the first president and then also won a second term as the Federal Republic of Central America. He's very famous. He's considered one of their founding fathers, the most important founding father. The state that Chris and I live in is called FAM, which is short for Francisco Morazan. So that would be just like saying that you live in DC for Washington in the United States. And then here I just wanted you to see, this is the flag of the first Central American Republic. And as you can tell, a lot of the countries kept a very similar version. And what this flag represents is it's the 2 blue stripes represent the water, and then the white represents their land, which is the strip in between on the ocean. And many of the countries kept a very similar flag when they finally decided to break apart, and including Costa Rica, who actually later redesigned their flag, which is why it's the most different. So these states devolved down into civil war in 1838. Nicaragua was the first to leave over some drama with who was going to get to have a canal or a channel going through, which I believe later was the Panama Canal. And then Honduras was second. And then the rest followed one by one until finally El Salvador was the only country left of, that was still saying it was part of this group. And so it also said, well, okay, I guess we're done now. And they also seceded. So here you can see that the flags are still very similar. Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica all were paying tribute to their original flag, and they're still, proud of it today. So Francisco Morazan, once they devolved into civil war, he was fighting for a while. He fled to South America, and then he came back with an army and the support of some liberals, and he tended more toward the progressive side. The more conservative monarchist Catholics tended toward very different ideas. He was the person who said that there wasn't going to be an official religion, and who started freedom of press, freedom of religion for these countries. But anyway, so he tried to invade back and get his country back together, and eventually he was arrested and executed on Independence Day, no less. So then that is the story of Honduran independence. So first they were a Spanish territory, then they were part of the first Mexican Empire. When Mexico fought for independence from Spain and finally gained independence, the Central American countries were voluntarily annexed by Mexico. That empire only lasted for 2 years. When Mexico reorganized itself, it gave permission to these other states to become their own country. So then you had Mexico, and then you also had the Central American Republic. And then eventually they broke into civil war, started breaking off. Nicaragua's went first, Honduras second, which is surprising since Francisco Morazan was actually born right here in River City in Tegucigalpa, where Chris and I are living now. But at any rate, Honduras is the birthplace of the founding father of all these Central American countries. And right now we have parades going on, and we've had a couple of flybys from military aircraft, and it's been a very cool first Independence Day in Honduras, getting to learn a little bit about their history. Hope you enjoyed.